Beautiful people. Welcome back to the Bruh Podcast. I'm here with my boy Corey Jones. I'm Andre Turan, and we haven't been up here for a while, Corey. I know we had to put the pod down for a little bit for things just going on in life, things shaking and moving. But I am so excited to be back here with you, bro, to revamp this thing. I think we did some good stuff last time, talking about a bevy of things. But as always, here at Bruh, we are here to talk manhood. We're here to talk purity, accountability, and we're just here to be transparent with our feelings and where we exist in this life, as far as being on the plane of being African American men who love God, who shape and fashion their lives to follow Jesus, um, while knowing that we live and exist with duality going on. And so, Corey, man, before we jump into anything, bro, I just want to give you the platform for a minute, man, just to say hello to the folks who we ain't talked to in a while. And I know the podcast space is a saturated area, but man, I feel like we got to have something to add and something to provide, bro. And so I'm gonna give it over to you for a couple of seconds, bro.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. I'm glad that we're doing this again because, like you said in your intro, man, we had something special. Like this is something unique, and there is a whole bunch of podcasts out there, but ours, I think, we had a certain viewership, bro, and I think it was a great time. It was a season that God was using us, and
Yeah,
I've heard so many people who watched us on YouTube or listened to us on our other platforms say how much it helped the content that we had, the 2 seasons that we did do.
yeah,
But I think the break was necessary. A lot of things happened while we were on break, but I'm so excited we're back. And if you're watching this, thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys. I know you're probably excited if you have watched the other 2 seasons. If you haven't watched the other 2 seasons, please go back and watch those because we had a lot of fruitful, rich
yeah.
conversations. Even matter of fact, that's for me too. I need to go back and watch. I always
Agreed.
have a problem watching stuff that, like, whenever I'm talking, like you could be talking. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like it. But when I start talking, I'm like, oh, I can't hear myself. I start tripping, man, really bad. So yeah,
Nah, bro, I'm with you. I think for the folks that are tuning in with us for the first time and didn't get to check out the first 2 seasons, we're now going to move to like this more open ended, like conversation style approach to the pod. And we're not going to keep you here long. We're aiming for about 20 minutes just to try to give you what we think God has placed on our hearts. And I think it was necessary. See, like we work in a very unique and niche area as far as talking about accountability, purity, and just living life as a Black man that loves God. And even our sentence is just loaded with so many different things that we can unpack. But I think the thing that we really want to start this new revamping, a new version of the Bruh podcast with is, and for those that don't know what Bruh stands for Brothers Rising Uphill. So our goal is to do that exactly. Um, and so I think the topic that we're going to start with today and will be a part one of, we're going to talk about, the title is going to be The Bleeding But Hidden Heart, um, in regards to being a man, especially a Black man as a believer. And I think this is we talked about podcasting being a saturated art form, but I think a trend that we're seeing within the podcasting space, especially within the podcast space for believers and Christians, is this, and maybe even broader, is this talk about men actually talking about their feelings, like truthfully, right? And we're not talking about in a toxic way. We're not talking about in a way that's weaponizing um, how we feel and how we've been underlooked as far as emotionally, but dissecting it, peeling it back, um, and properly reconstructing how we move forward after we talk about our feelings into a world that may not be necessarily considerate of it while still trying to look like Christ. Um, and so I think for starters, bro, got my notes here on the phone, but let's just start on in the area of like societal expectations and stereotypes that discourage us as men, and then more particularly as men of God, from talking about and expressing our emotions and how detrimental that can be, bro.
yeah, man. I think for some reason, um, we've been taught like as men that emotions are soft, like as if we're not like having emotions or expressing emotions is a feminine trait, and it's not like um, that type of thinking and perspective has been perpetuated, um, and even to the point where um, I don't know, it's so deep, bro. Like it's so deep that when we do feel, we try to when we because we're human beings first and foremost.
Yeah.
So when we do feel emotions, we try to like tell ourselves like try to psych ourselves out. Like if a breakup happens, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't care about that. I don't care about her. Or if our father, we have father issues or fatherlessness. If we're talking about in the black community, um, it's like, well, I don't need him in the first place, and we don't do a good job of actually like processing our emotions. Like I didn't hear about processing emotions until I was my late 20s, early
Yeah.
30s. Like that's something that we never talked through. Even to the point, I think I was talking to my aunt or somebody about you know the grieving process and when you've lost somebody, um, specifically with the black church. Like it's not called when we have funerals, it's like, oh, it's a homegoing.
Yeah.
And even though that's true, for those who know Christ and claim Christ, when a believer goes to when they die, when their life ends, they go to be with Christ. So it is a home going, right? But it's to kind of psych yourself out as if like um and you shouldn't be crying. They went to heaven. They would be with Jesus, but it's like Jesus cried when Lazarus died, and he knew
Yeah.
he was going to raise him from the dead. The Bible said Jesus wept. So Jesus he felt those feelings, and a lot of times, especially as African American men, like we suppress our emotions as if it's a bad thing. So I think we psych ourselves out a lot, and we do ourselves a disservice when we do that.
No, bro. I think there's two things you can excuse me that you can glean from that, man. Like I sometimes I talk to my boys, both that are believers or not, and the constant strand that I see is that I think Cass is just tired. I remember when I was younger, bro. My one of the things we used to do, my dad used to love this. As soon as he would come to the door, all his kids would just run to the door and go hug him, right? And he talks about it today how is that one of his favorite things ever. But I remember being in my room watching him pull up to the house, and he'd be sitting in front of the house with the car lights on, just sitting there for like 20 minutes. Like I never understood like what was happening. One day I talked to him about it. He talked about how like sometimes he just pull up to the house and just need a short moment to himself. And the
I
funny thing is
get it.
I see myself doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'll pull up to the crib and I'll just sit there and just go, right, and just
Uh-huh.
breathe. And I've talked to some of my guys about it. I'm like, man, why sometimes do I just generally just walk around angry? It's like when I wake up and I'm moving around, I feel slighted, I feel jaded, I just feel angry and I feel tight. Um, and one of my homeboys like, man, I feel the same way. I was in a barbershop recently, getting my hair cut. It's a good day. You're supposed to walk in the barbershop and you feel kind of regular and dusty when you go in there. But as you get in the cut, it's like your mood is slightly improving because you finna go from a three to
Yeah.
a smooth eight at least, right? And your confidence is different. But I remember recently I was sitting there, I was just looking at the other black brothers' faces in the shop, and there was just this fatigue and anger and worn out look just on the natural state of their face as they're just getting cut. They're not talking to anybody, they're not expressing anything, they're just getting cut, and it looks like their natural face is a face that is burdened.
Mm.
And that bothers me in the sense that I think we're living in a time where everyone has an opinion, where everybody is can express how they feel and have a right to it, and yeah, that's fair. But I think in that space, um, men are somehow also left behind for two reasons. A, people do encourage us to express how we feel. We have seen that become a trend as well. But it's like when we actually open our mouth and then begin to go forward and express that, it's taken, it might not be taken the way we want, or like it's not taken with grace, or it's not taken with, hey, I asked you to express yourself, then you express yourself, and it's at that. It's always like a rebuttal. It's always a reply
Yeah.
instead of like. for example, you know how I'm sure your wife does this. You know, sometimes she just wants you to listen and she don't want your logical side as a man to come out and give her the answer.
Right.
She just wants you to listen.
Uh-huh.
I think often on one side of the coin, we're asked to express how we feel without the listening being accompanied with it. It's like we
Mm.
say it, okay, cool, but the way that you said it made me feel this way. It's like it always comes with a stipulation,
Like ping pong.
like ping pong, right? It's never just okay. Thanks for expressing that to me. How can I help you?
Right.
Or how can we move forward in this manner? Or on the other side of the coin, I think sometimes dudes sit on their feelings because A, they know that could happen, but then B, it's like I don't know if you truly want the truth of what I have to say, and I don't know if you can handle what's going to come out the other side of what I have to say.
Right.
Um, and I think you made a good point that in that space, it's unhealthy for us to sit on it because our Maker, Christ, he never sat on any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I thought it was a good point you made, bro.
No, I think I appreciate it, man, because it's like the first thing you have to realize um, is like you do have emotions, you know, like and those are not a bad thing. So it's like a step one, embrace your emotions, right?
Yeah,
And if you were to give it to steps, and then step two would be learn how to communicate it. Because to your point, um, and we have to give each other grace, man, because I think generationally speaking, as Black people, like the generation before us, our parents and our grandparents, that was we were taught as a people, and I don't want to get too much into this, but we were taught like during slavery messed a lot of things up for us where we couldn't say anything. Right, our
yeah,
master told us what to do. The master said what to do, and you did it. And you didn't talk back. And then let's go over to civil rights days. You were told to get to the back of the bus, and you didn't question it. You got to the back of the bus, and if you didn't, there would be repercussions for that. And then you go further down, and where we're at now, we're still in a time where it's like, does anybody even care about what I say? Because then
yeah.
if I express it, like it's not like anything going to change. So it's different for us, but we have to learn. Like we're graduating and we're learning that okay, like through therapy, um, a lot of things have changed, and so we're to the position where men are able to say, "Hey, vulnerability is not, that's mass. It's not like that's a feminine thing, you know."
Nah, Corey, like, and bro, like vulnerability, bro, it saved my life. In the sense of, bro, uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's these I think as you mature and as life goes forward, um, I think you begin to realize there are some things in your life that are just heavy and they just sit with you and they stay there.
Yeah.
And I cannot express to you, bro. And I think we talked about this before, where I would be without accountability, without just our conversations where I'm like, hey, Corey, bro, whether it's a quick text, bro, I'm really struggling with this. This is
Yeah.
happening. That might be the most authentic self I'm ever able to present because I've been able to identify you as a safe place. And
Mm.
so, like, I would suggest for my brothers out there that are looking for a place to express, do that and with accountability. Try to identify who can hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to ask you this question because I've been thinking about it. Suppression emotions are not healthy. Like it's not healthy. It leads to this boil over effect,
Right.
where next thing you know you're acting out of your wounds, and that's something we're going to talk about later. But you've allowed it stack up so high, where now you're ripping at the seams, and whatever comes out at that point in time, you don't care. It's going to come out, and somebody's going to take the brunt of it. It just is what it is.
Right.
Um, do you believe? Because I think a lot of guys have to end up. I think a lot of guys have to end up resorting to suppressing their emotion, whether you're a believer or not, which is a
Right.
shame, because of the things that we discussed earlier. But like I argue that even suppressing that emotion, that emotion under the hand of God, choosing to suppress it, not taking it to Him, not taking it to a safe place, is pride. I think that's prideful. Do you do
Mm-hmm.
you, do you think that falls in that vein? Or like even though we don't feel like we're being heard, I'm gonna sit on this emotion. I think it's still prideful and
It
believe the sin.
is. It is, man. I still deal with it
Yeah,
today. I still wrestle with it. Um, because we want to be. It's a thing. We want to be our own God. Like we want to. I don't want to keep. We want to put our hands in it.
yeah,
We don't want to. Um, and that's because we still deal with our flesh, man. Like we just not like God says we can take anything and everything to Him,
Yeah.
but especially as a man, like like I don't want to be crying to God all the time, even though God don't mind it. I feel like I don't want to be soft before God. But you think about David. I
Yeah.
believe God said David was a man after his own heart. David took all kinds of emotions to God.
That's facts.
He probably was constantly crying before God, like, crying, angry, upset. Like this dude got a problem, man. This dude got some issues. But he took it to God, and God did. It's something to doing that. And we all there's a piece that comes out of that. Um, and then we're learning while we're doing it, right? We're learning how to um, depend on God, because without Him, we can't do this. Relationships are hard, man.
Yeah.
Emotions are tough. He's the creator of the emotions, right? So why He can handle them, right? So if He's the one who created emotion and gave us emotions, Jesus, I think, like, not to go off track, but if you look at the life of Jesus, man, Jesus was in the garden sweating and crying before God. Like, this man was emotional. Jesus wept when Lazarus died. You see all sorts of emotions that Jesus expressed in the Bible. Like,
Yeah.
he was an emotional dude, and he didn't hide those emotions.
Nah, and the one of the primary reasons why I asked if you think if it's prideful, because I look at I'm reading here. I look at First Peter 5:6-8, and it says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time." And then verse 7 goes on to say, "Cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you.
Yeah.
Be alert." Verse 8, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And I think the progression of that verse is very interesting, because in the first verse, we're talking about humbling yourselves under God's mighty hand. I think there has to be humility. I think you have to reach a place of humility and complete surrender at God's feet, like we talked about the psalmist did, in order for you to even be able to do what is said in verse 7, where it's casting your cares, casting your anxiety. The
Right.
Bible talks about how anxiety weighs down one's heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it can cause you to stumble, right?
Yeah.
And so if we decide to be, even though like the world might be working against us, even though we can't find a safe place, even though we feel like what we might be said is still criticized and broken down and fingers are pointing, even though you asked me to express myself, but now what I'm expressing isn't good enough, and where can I fit in? Okay, well, the first place we can fit in is going to God. It's
Mm-hmm.
going before His face, right? Because the word talks about, if you cast those cares upon Him, he'll willingly shoulder the burden. Psalms 55:22 talks about casting those cares upon Him. He'll shoulder it. Because if we don't cast it, if we don't give it over to Him, we can become susceptible to what verse 8 talks about in First Peter 5. Because us sitting on emotions, us allowing anxiety and these other things that we may face, anger, to ferment and froth and root itself deeper into us, prevents us from being able to have an alert and sober mind. And then it gives leeway and an opportunity for the enemy, who is already looking to attack and bring you down any way can, to waltz right into your life without you even knowing. And now these things that we harbor end up becoming our identity and our character
Right.
subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's subconsciously our character and identity, it begins to present itself consciously as who we are too.
Mm.
And so, bro, I think it is so key to, like, if you cannot get before a community or a group to express and talk, if at this moment you don't have a therapist, if at this moment you don't have an outlet, at least try to go to God first and
Yeah.
allow the Holy Spirit to work these things out. Because the humility is the start to the path, man. It is.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
world will tell you to be prideful, the world will tell you, hey, sit in your anger. Let them feel you. Oh, they
Mm-hmm.
want to hear you? Well, stay quiet. Prove a point. But I think a bigger and worse point is made by sitting in your pride, which leads to no type of healing. You know?
Yeah, man. Everything you said, bro. Like, yeah, because because you're gonna entrusting your emotion and your feelings to God, God is able, when He is the first person we go to, with that. And God does have his community around us to be there to encourage us. Um, if you don't do those things, you tend to lean to your own understanding and you try to rationalize these thoughts and emotions on your own, and it can be very dangerous. And
Yeah.
then what you do is like we've been talking about in our group forever, is you self-medicate. Maybe that's alcohol, maybe that's porn, maybe
Yeah.
that's, oh yeah, she did that to me. Guess what? I'm about to do, because there's a
Mhm.
world, there's a even as Christians, man, there's a philosophy of the world. There's like, I remember when back in college, this girl I broke up with, like, I really liked her, and I broke up with her, and I was like, I don't know how to deal with these emotions. And I kind of went back. If I did go to God about it initially, but I was like, nah, He gonna have me like forgive her and stuff, and I don't want to
Mhm.
do that. I'm upset because I know God is gonna have me be gracious to her. Like, no, I started trying to talk to her best friend. I I shot my shot at her best friend. Her best friend was like, "You really gonna talk? You just broke up with her? I'm not gonna do this." And I was like,
What the how the old school song go, bro? By Sugar Hill Gang, bro. They said hotel, motel, holiday inn, and if if your girl start acting up, then you take her friend.
"You
That's
take your
wild.
friend." I was
That's
trying to
wild.
hurt. First of all, I did kind of like her friend, low key. The second of all, I was like, "Yo, I'm about to be dirty. I'm about to be really dirty and take your friend." And that is because that's me leading to my own understanding that and
Yeah.
trusting that with God. A lot of times it's an unwillingness because, man, I don't want to go through. I'm mad right now. I want to feel what I feel. I want to be. I want. And in my mind, I'm justified. And you might very well be justified for the anger. Like, I'm not saying that you don't feel that anger.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us to be angry, not even though we're reading this book currently called Unoffendable. But
Unoffendable. Yeah.
he doesn't. It's not saying he's saying you're going to feel angry. We're going to feel what we feel, right? But it's like not to hold on to that. And when you don't entrust that in a safe community, when you don't go to God about it, you do lead your pride.
Yeah.
And if your pride goes unchecked, man, it'll take you to places that you're like, man, how did I end up here? You know?
No, that's facts, man. And we're gonna definitely dive deeper into this. We're gonna have a part two on this. I know he's only told the people we're gonna keep him about 20 minutes. And so I'm
Yeah.
gonna wrap up with this. And I think we should coast in this going into the next part of the bleeding. I mean the hidden but bleeding heart. Um I talked about this verse a little earlier. Proverbs 12:25 says, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. And so this is why having that community and having people around you that are safe places are important, because yes, there may really be anxiety holding you down. Anxiety can be a whole bevy of different things. It doesn't have to just be anxiety, but all these things, all these ills of our heart, it weighs us down, right? And we know that uh, in Psalms it also talks about that, you know, make sure you're guarding your heart, because if you're not guarding your heart, everything that you do, well, everything that you do flows from your heart anyway.
Right.
So all your thoughts, all your actions, all those things, it flows from your heart. The Bible also talks about how, um, Jesus was talking about how we're defiled from the inside. And then Jeremiah talks about how the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know I'm going on a Bible rant, but that's also why in Ezekiel, I believe, what is it, like 36:26, where God talks about wanting to give us this regenerated and new heart,
Yeah.
no longer a
Yeah.
heart that is stony and stubborn.
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful that though the Lord knows, and we have plenty of examples of men in the Bible and otherwise, though the Lord knows that our heart is bleeding behind whatever mask we put up, behind whatever else is going on, behind our silence, behind a whole bevy of things, He is calling us to Him for our heart to be regenerated and to be renewed. And He constantly talks about that though we battle these emotions and though we fight these things, some type of surrender has to take place, whether it's before man, whether it's before your brother, right? Or whether it's before God, and hopefully before God. And that
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of that, the heart can be used and regenerated for great things. I think we want to get into that next time,
Yeah,
bro, because
yeah.
I got a whole slew of stuff we could talk about and examples of what happens when you let that heart harden. Because if you're
Mm,
sitting on those emotions, and you letting it froth and you letting it ferment and you letting it get deeper and become more of you, your heart hardens.
yeah.
And I don't know, bro, but biblically, bro, anywhere I've seen somebody's heart get hard, bro, that's it for them, bro. I mean, it's it
Mm,
for them.
yeah.
It just is. So,
It's a lot of it's calluses
mhm,
on, you know, where Jesus wants to bring healing.
yep,
You can allow your heart to grow hard and, like you said,
yep.
callous, bro.
And then from there, like, with no matter what bridge the Savior and Creator's world tries to build towards you, it just don't. It don't. You don't see it. You're not open to it. You're not willing to take it. Because I mean, we're not gonna go deep into this hole, but like even Judas, bro, he ain't have to go hang himself. Grace was available to him too.
Yep.
But the matter of the heart was so deep and um so he tried to take that thing on alone, and you see what happens. So, brothers, man,
Mm.
and even our sisters that might be tuning in, we want to thank y'all for coming to kick it with us, per usual. And we'll be back with another episode of the Bruh Podcast. But I just want to I want to throw a line out to my guys out there who might be bleeding from the inside and no one else sees it. Find community, bro.
Yes.
Go before God. Hit your boy up, man. It's hard as hard as it might be for you, and unnatural it might be for you. Let somebody know, because someone does care. Much love to y'all.